The Raiders continue to fine-tune their roster in preparation for the draft at the end of the month and will move on from a playmaking cornerback. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 7th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your consistent support and the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. Does a fantastic job. We appreciate him. We shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As much feedback as possible we'll get in segment number 3 as we close things out. Your calls, your texts, a lot of really good stuff. We'll get as much in as possible coming up segment number 3. Segment number 2, Field Yates, ESPN NFL draft analyst, had his draft conference call last week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday. Of course, I got a copy of that, and gonna just bring you a few sound bites, probably like a handful of sound bites from that conference call. Different players, different positions that he's talking about. Some pretty good stuff. Again, just trying to get you as much information, as much knowledge as possible to get you ready for the draft coming up at the end of April. So that'll be all coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just news and the notes of the day, whatever I collected over the course of the weekend. And we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So off top, the biggest news for the Raiders coming out of the weekend is from Vinny Bonsignore from the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Raider Nation Radio 920. He tweeted out on Sunday, the Raiders are working to trade cornerback Jack Jones. If they can't work out a trade, Jones will be released on Monday. Cornerback Jack Jones was set to make $3.4 million this season, and he also tweeted out a little bit follow-up just for clarity. Jack Jones has not been waived yet. There is no waiver wire today. The Raiders will try to trade him between now and tomorrow. So depending on what time you're listening to this, Jack Jones may already have been released from the silver and black. And I know that Ian Rappaport from NFL Network tweeted out that they've already moved on from him. But as Vinny pointed out, there was no waiver wire on Sunday. So it'll happen on Monday if they can't find a trade partner. And so you're probably wondering, well, why would they find someone who's, to trade for him if they already know that he's going to get released? Well, they don't want to have to wait in the waiver wire line. Like, he would have to go through, since he's still on his rookie contract, he would still have to clear waivers. So if another team wants to claim him, like the Raiders claimed him when they wanted him, when Antonio Pierce ran up to Champ Kelly's office and said, hey, go get that guy Jack Jones, they claimed him off waivers from the Patriots. Well, whenever they do make it official and move on from him, he'll have to clear waivers as well. So if a team just doesn't want to go through that process, they'd throw a late-round pick at the Raiders. But most likely, he'll end up getting released. And really, that's a shame, because it looked like Jack Jones had found some new life. I know it was a short sample size of what you saw from him in 2023, but looked like, after being a cast-off there in New England, and look, New England's not for everybody, obviously, right? I mean, there's certain things that go in New England with the Patriots that, don't go with other teams, and everybody's not going to get along there. Looked like he had found a potential home with the Raiders, and obviously Antonio Pierce, he had a great relationship with him. We saw some flashes, some greatness the first year that he was with the Raiders in 2023, and last year I thought he was going to take that step forward and be able to show that he could be a true number 1 defensive back, and it just never worked out. Unfortunately, it never worked out for him, right? I don't root for people to fail. I know some do. That's not my MO. I don't think people need us to root for them to fail. They could do that on their own. He just didn't get it done, right? I mean, the guy gave up, double-digit touchdowns in 2024. I believe 10 touchdowns he gave up in 2024. He's one of those guys that's going to gamble a lot. Sometimes he's going to get it right. Other times he's not. But even with that knowing that about Jack Jones, he didn't produce enough in 2024. Didn't tackle enough, right? Wasn't physical enough. And on top of that, with everything that he did wrong in 2024, he's just not really a Pete Carroll fit. I mean, if you just look at his body type, his size, doesn't really fit with what Pete Carroll likes in a defensive back. So, when there's new staffs, there's always going to be roster turnover. So I wish Jack Jones the best. Like I said, I don't root for people to fail. So anytime that any guy gets moved on from another team, I hope that they pick up somewhere else and succeed, because we know in the NFL, it's not for long, right? You have a handful of years that you may have an opportunity to have a career. And, once you wash out, you wash out, or you retire, whatever the case may be. But a lot of times the league will retire you before you actually get to retire. So hopefully Jack finds a spot, but it won't be with the silver and black in 2025. So they move on from him. So, of course, when that news broke on Sunday, a lot of people started talking about the Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, how that's an easy connection to the Raiders. All right, well, they're going to go after Will Johnson at number 6 when they pick. And we actually have been talking about Will Johnson as of late because of what Adam Rank said from NFL Network when he was on my radio show talking about Will Johnson and how he fits the MO of what a Pete Carroll cornerback actually looks like. So the other day on Thursday, I had Mel Kiper Jr. on my radio show, which again, I have him on my radio show, Joe and Q, every Thursday, normally at 12:30 Eastern time. But this past Thursday, it was actually 1 o'clock. So since we've been talking about Will Johnson a lot, I thought, you know what? Great time to bring him up to Mel and get his thoughts on him. So here's the question I asked to Mel about Will Johnson.
Mel, how come we're not talking about Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, more than we are? It seems like the only cornerback we're really talking about is a cornerback / wide receiver in Travis Hunter.
Yeah, Will, I think, just didn't have the year. He's had a couple injuries. He didn't finish out the process healthy, didn't finish out the season healthy, second half of the season. He wasn't even there when the Michigan upset Ohio State, wasn't there for all those games late in the year. So the injury, I think, affected it. The fact that we didn't think, I know Field Yates had brought this up back in September when we started the first draft podcast in early September. We want to see how fast is he. We don't know that. So again, that's where Will Johnson is right now, coming off a year where he didn't finish strong. Yes, he's got a lot of talent. Yes, he's an interception waiting to happen because he's so great at anticipating and reading the quarterback and then bursting on the football. To me, he's a mid-first. The interesting team's going to be Dallas. If Dallas doesn't take a running back, if they think that's a little too high, say for a Marion Hampton or a wide receiver, and the wide receivers are dropping while Golden's rising, McMillan's dropping just a bit, then they could look at a Will Johnson. Certainly the 49ers, the Cardinals. There's a lot of teams in the middle of the first round, I'm going to say middle, say late, early to middle, in that 10 to 15, 10 to 16 range that could look strongly at Will Johnson. But I think the days of top 5, top 7 are pretty much over.
So that was Mel's thoughts right there, and it's just a lot of unknown. Right, and you're going to hear Field Yates coming up in segment number 2 talk about Will Johnson as well and the big unknown. Not can he play, because we all know he's a player, but in 2024 he was banged up, wasn't available, wasn't that guy, wasn't able to be a part of any big games, and was the reason why that their defense wasn't as good as it was when they went and won the national championship. So there's a lot of questions around Will Johnson, but Mel has him around a mid-round pick. So we'll see where he ends up going, and maybe that is a person that the Raiders would target. And if they would, I'm sure that they would probably try to target a trade back and then maybe get him. 6 might be a little bit rich for Will Johnson with the silver and black. But again, obviously it's easy to put that together now that you know that they have another hole on the team when that is the cornerback position after Jack Jones. They move on from him. Also hearing rumblings that a Geno Smith presser could be happening this morning. It could be pretty early. It could be a little bit later on this afternoon. Again, depending on what time that you're listening to this show, maybe it already happened. But hearing from a couple different people that it sounds like a Geno Smith presser is going to happen. And remember, the first day of actually off-season workouts is tomorrow on the 8th. So that they have the first day on the 8th. Voluntary minicamp is the 21st to the 23rd. OTA off-season workouts again May 19th, May 21st and 22nd, May 27th, May 29th and 30th, June 2nd through 5th, and then mandatory minicamp is June 10th through 12th, and then they break for the summer and come back for training camp. So just something to pay attention to and look for. It looks like a Geno Smith press conference is incoming and could be happening right now, depending on, like I said, when you're listening to this. Also, my final nugget I have for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, little news and notes of the day. Dane Brugler from The Athletic is reporting that Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas, and Jalen Milroe, quarterback from Alabama, will be in attendance in Green Bay in the draft. And the reason I bring this up is because they normally are very selective with who they have go there because they don't want them to sit in the green room very long. They don't want them to be there and have that, Aaron Rodgers slide where the cameras keep going to him and have that Johnny Manziel moment or Geno Smith moment. Remember when Geno went in the second round when he was selected by the Jets and they just kept going to the green room and seeing him? They try not to have that happen. So they try to be very selective. I actually heard that they're going to have less than normal. The amount of people that are normally there is usually around 13 prospects. Sounds like they're going to have less than that. But Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas, and Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama, will be in attendance. I was told a few Fridays ago that quarterback Jackson Dart from Ole Miss will be in attendance as well. So that's 3 guys right there. And I bring it up because somebody must give these guys first-round grades if they believe that they're going to hear their name called pretty early, and so they're going to make that trip to Green Bay. So a couple names to look for: Matthew Golden, Jalen Milroe, and also Jackson Dart. Coming up in segment number 2, you hear from Field Yates. He's got some thoughts on the draft coming up at the end of April. And again, trying to get you all the information that you need to know as you get ready for that draft. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. The NCAA tournament, well, it came and went, right? Getting wrapped up today with the championship game. We're going to see Houston and Florida. It's going to be fantastic. FanDuel's giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you bet your first $5 bet. That's $200 extra bucks to see everything. Buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, who's cutting down the nets. And again, we know who's cutting down the nets, right? It's either going to be Florida or H-Town, but we don't know how it's going to shake out. Especially if you watch those games over the weekend, you know that there's no shot of knowing how these things are going to play out because, man, they're exciting, to say the least. That's for sure. Obviously, spreads, totals, game props, you can bet anything that you want. Tournament games are always a lot of fun. So there's reason to get in on all the action. The FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the action all tournament long. Again, the tourney wrapping up tonight. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I want you to hear a few sound bites from ESPN's Field Yates. He held his pre-draft conference call just like we heard from Mel Kiper. We've heard from Daniel Jeremiah and Mike Tannenbaum. Well, Field Yates had his as well. I think Mel Kiper's is coming up in a couple days. Matter of fact, I believe it's coming up tomorrow. I'll find out, or maybe his next mock draft is dropping tomorrow. But we'll find out. He's got another conference call coming up. I believe it's this week. So look forward to that. That'll be the final one he does before the draft actually takes place. So look forward to that. But this one is from Field Yates, and the first soundbite that I want you to hear is just about the running back class, right? The depth of the running back class is something that we've talked about so much on this show, and it's been talked about in great lengths just in general when it comes to the draft. Here's Field Yates talking about the depth of the running back class.
It's been a while since I can recall a running back class this deep. I'm going to do a little bit of deference to Mel Kiper Jr., but of course he is the man who created this industry, and he says it might be the deepest he's ever seen. So that to me kind of rubber stamps just how unique this class is. I've got 29 running backs who have a draftable grade, and it's possible there's a diamond in the rough that I haven't even studied yet who deserves that draftable grade. But for 29 of, call it 250 grades, so more than 10% of my draftable grades come from one position that we know is considered in some people's eyes more replaceable. So you could even wait until after the draft to find a useful player. I think speaks volume to how unique this class is. That being said, a couple of years ago, I think people's eyes were open to two realities. One is that difference-making running backs still can create significant value for you, even if the reality is that they might not be as good of bets to play for 10 years as any other position might be, right? You kind of expect your wide receivers to have the chance to play for somewhere between 7 or 10 years. There aren't that many running backs at the age of 30 that are still playing at a high level. But I also think it opened up some people's eyes to looking at unique skills because where I think Job, like when you think back to that draft class, did he stack up to every other running back in every category? The answer is probably no. If you're looking for a guy who all he's going to do is he needs to get you 1 yard, would you prefer Jahmyr Gibbs or some of the other backs that went after Jahmyr Gibbs? The answer is probably somebody else. But if you're looking for somebody whose superpower, his speed, and his acceleration is almost literally unmatched, Dave. I mean, there were games this year, and I'm sure you felt this way too, where I felt like I was watching a video game with Jahmyr out there on the field. I mean, the San Francisco game in week 16, 17, the second to last game of the year, of course, on Monday Night Football, I swear I thought that was a simulation. There's no way that was real speed. So I think it opened up people's eyes to if a player at that position has a particular superpower that is tailor-made for what you want to do or what you need to do on offense, yes, running backs can come later in the draft, but you don't bypass a guy who is a clearly identified fit for what you are currently lacking.
29 draftable grades, right? But I like what he said about a superpower. If a guy has a superpower, go get him. So the Raiders have to look at Ashton Genty and say, does he have that superpower? Does he have a superpower that could take them from being, who they are or who they were to who they want to be, right? And be able to put the team basically on his back. Obviously he's not going to do it by himself. Obviously the offensive line's got to be there. The quarterback play has got to be good. The weapons have got to be good. But can he be a superhero for the Raiders? That's really the question when it comes down to, are they picking him at number 6 or not? they've got to decide if he's got superhero tendencies. The thing that's weird to me about this when it comes to Ashton Genty and the Raiders is not that, everyone's had him mocked there. It just seems like no one's had him mocked anywhere else. I mean, there's a couple one-offs. Obviously, last week I brought the example of when the Jaguars picked Genty, but it's like it just seems like nobody else has him pegged anywhere else but the Raiders at number 6. Normally, you'll see a few different shakeups. It just seems like everyone is Genty, almost like it's set in stone. Like, we know Cam Ward's going number 1 to Tennessee. I feel like we're pretty sure that Travis Hunter is going to go number 2 to the Browns, but it just seems like this is almost a foregone conclusion, and he's picked number 6, so you never know what can happen. It's funny just not to see too many variations of where they have the Raiders going at number 6. I mentioned Will Johnson, right, the cornerback from Michigan. You heard what Mel Kiper had to say about him. Field Yates was also asked about Will Johnson, and here he is speaking on the cornerback from Michigan.
Will is not a mystery man because we've been talking about him since his true freshman year at Michigan, but he's kind of a mystery pre-draft man. Didn't do anything at the combine, wasn't able to participate in the Senior Bowl if he had decided to go down there because of this foot injury. I think he is scheduled to do a workout in the next 10 or 11 days for scouts, but wasn't part of Michigan's pro day when those guys ran there as well. He played just 6 games this past season. The question for Will, I think there are 2 questions that scouts have been looking and evaluators have been looking for answers on. One is what's up with the foot? How far along is it, right? It's a question. I don't think it's a concern, but it's a question. But 2, and perhaps importantly, is the top end speed for Will Johnson. I have also been consistent on this. Apparently, I've got a soft spot in my heart for each of the Wills is going to go really high because I didn't think the speed was a problem for Will Johnson on tape. This guy is a ball hawk. He is a turnover machine. He is a frisky pass breakup waiting to happen. He's got great instincts. He's got excellent ball skills as well. He's got good size. So I think he's still a top 10 player in this class. He's number 10 overall for me.
Mystery pre-draft man, right? Banged up last season. Speed is a question. How is the foot? Will that be an issue moving forward? Still top 10 pick. Right? I mean, it's just one of those things. Speed is something that's been talked about quite a bit. When you turn on the film, it looks like he's fine. He's fast enough, right? I mean, they always start worrying about 40 times. Well, how fast does he play? That's the big question that you have to ask, but that's one of the scenarios. And then the foot injury, right? I mean, is that something that the Raiders want to go down that path? Do they want to take a guy that's coming off a foot injury, knowing what happened last time they took a guy coming off a foot injury? And I know it wasn't this staff. It was Dave Ziegler and company, but they took Tyree Wilson. And I know that's a real big man with a wheel issue, but, I mean, it's something that they might think about. And honestly, with a corner, you might want to think about that as well. Guys that are cutting and moving and dropping on a dime. And, you know what I mean? Like, there's you really have to take the medicals into consideration. So we'll see where Will Johnson goes. I think it's easy if the Raiders weren't to go Ashton Genty and they were to trade back. I think it'd be an easy fit to tie him to the Raiders, especially knowing that they have another hole now on that defense at the cornerback room. And he's obviously longer than Jack Jones is, so I can see him being a good fit there. But you see what they've already brought in, the guys that they brought in and the kind of the body types that they're looking for. So I can see Will Johnson being that guy that they're looking for. And not to mention, he's a ball hawk. Always want to have a ball hawk. The Raiders, that's the one thing that they don't have. Not enough guys that turn the ball over. And that's why Jack Jones was always a guy that was appealing, because he is a guy that can get his hands on the ball and take it the other way. He just wasn't able to do it in 2024 enough and gave up too many big plays. So we knew that he wasn't going to be a fit. Not a big surprise that he's not going to be with the Raiders in 2025. Up next is Field Yates talking about the Giants. I just mentioned the Giants. They've signed Russell Wilson. They have Jameis Winston. Obviously, they're in the quarterback room. Does that mean that they'll pass on a quarterback at number 3? Because, again, I feel it's pretty confident. Everyone knows Cam Ward's going to go 1. And then you're going to see Travis Hunter go number 2. And if you don't see Travis Hunter go number 2, maybe you see Abdul Carter. Seems like the Browns aren't going to take a quarterback at 2. So will the Giants do it at 3? Here's Field Yates on that.
By the end of the day yesterday, 12 hours after the mock had gone live on ESPN.com, there were some people that were sort of saying, hey, I might, if I were you or if I were doing my own mock draft, it might not include a quarterback at number 3 for the Giants. But what I will say is that this is a unique situation where I think 3 weeks left sounds like not much time to change your mind on a quarterback, but it might be enough in this instance for the Giants because of the fact that there hasn't been a pro day yet for Shedeur Sanders. About an hour after this wraps up, I will be on a plane, or at least on my way to the airport here in Connecticut to fly to Boulder to go watch that. And I can't wait to see what it all looks like. But it's a pretty unique opportunity, is that the Giants will see him up close and personal, and they also will, I'm sure at some point over the next 3 weeks, spend some time with him. I know that it seems unfathomable that a team could be leaning one way 3 weeks out from the draft on a quarterback and then change their minds. I'm just reminded of, as an example, there was a lot of suggestions, smoke, that Mac Jones might have been the 49ers' preference back in 2021 when they made that big move up from 12 to 3. On top of that, you've seen teams like the Jets move up from 6 to 3 back in 2018, where there was ambiguity about which quarterback they'd land at number 3 overall. Remember that draft class was so unpredictable. So this is a very long-winded way of saying that I haven't ruled out the possibility of the Giants taking a quarterback 3 overall, but if there is a bigger question that pertains to the first round as of right now, I haven't yet found it, because it does feel like that's a big lever for the top 10 picks. You know, the Patriots, I'm guessing, will be rooting hard for the Giants to take a quarterback at number 3, which probably guarantees them one of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Meanwhile, other teams might be saying, that's fine. If you don't take Shedeur Sanders, we may try to either grab him ourselves or potentially trade up for him, because we know when it comes to quarterbacks, if you wait, you often get burned.
So obviously, again, this was from last week. Colorado hadn't had their NFL showcase yet. They did that on Friday. It was heavily attended by everyone, including the Giants. The Giants had everyone and their mama there, right from the GM to the head coach to, just about everyone, all kind of scouts. It seemed like everyone who was there except for Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. There were so many people there from the Giants. And, again, you don't know. Are they there for Shedeur? Are they there for Travis Hunter? Are they there for a combination of the both? They did a lot of work on Shedeur all college season. Like, they always had scouts there at Colorado's game. So, again, I feel like the draft really starts with them. Cam Ward 1, Travis Hunter 2, and then what are the Giants going to do? And my guy Jordan Ronan from ESPN, who covers the Giants on our mock draft, he had Abdul Carter going number 3. He had them passing on a quarterback as well. So could you start to see a slide for Shedeur? I mean, only time will tell, right? I think that's probably the biggest question in this draft is could he really go on a slide? Couldn't he go on a draft day slide where all of a sudden he's looking up and it's at pick number 9 and the Saints are on the board and on the clock, and then all of a sudden he's still there? Like, that would be a shock to me, but it doesn't sound like it'll be a shock to a lot of different people, because, man, it's been so, like, up and down on that guy. Probably the biggest question coming up in April's draft. Just got a couple more here from Field Yates from ESPN, and this one is on Tyler Shough, the quarterback from Louisville, and he was asked a different question. And it was, matter of fact, it was Tyler Shough. He has him going to the Browns in round 2, the second pick in round 2. He has them taking him in his latest mock draft. So he was asked about that. So he gave like a minute and a half question or answer to that question about, why he passed on a quarterback in the first round and why he made a decision on the second round. But he didn't really talk about Tyler Shough until like the last 30 seconds. So I just want you to hear about the quarterback in Field Yates' mind. So here he goes, Field Yates, real quick on Louisville quarterback Tyler Shough.
Chuck, I thought he's a heck of an athlete. He's got all kinds of different arm angles he can throw from, good enough arm strength as well, big-bodied quarterback, very mature, seen a lot of stuff, even if some of it's come from the sidelines. But, 7 years of being involved with the program, 3 programs in his case, but just he's seen a lot more than your typical quarterback entrant into the draft.
So there you go. Like I said, it was really short on him. I could have gave the whole 2-minute answer, but it would have been about a minute 30, minute 40 on nothing that, pertains to the Raiders or anything that you're interested in. But, and then the last couple seconds on Tyler Shough. So I thought I would break it down and make it make a little bit more sense. But Pro Football Focus, they've got their draft guide out. What they say about Tyler Shough is a big body quarterback, ideal NFL size. Good arm, not great arm. He can zip passes into tight windows over the middle, has a higher big-time throw percentage and turnover-worthy play percentage in that area. He's at his best when throwing with velocity, but also displays good touch and ball placement on deep passes. He becomes more inconsistent at shorter distances. One of the older prospects in the class, coming from the 2018 recruiting cycle, spent 3 years at Oregon before playing 3 more at Texas Tech and finishing his career at Louisville. His injury history is concerning, 2 season-ending collarbone injuries and a broken fibula on his record. In terms of pocket management, he must be more willing to step up. Too often he fades away on throws, even when pressure is not imminent. While he won't offer much in terms of mobility or playmaking outside of structure, he has the arm talent to attempt and complete throws from various arm angles. Strengths: adequate height to make throws over the middle of the field, NFL caliber arm talent with the ability to throw with good velocity. Arm strength is good, though not great. Shows the ability to apply the correct touches on passes. And the weaknesses: extensive injury history, limited mobility and escapability by NFL standards. Footwork and ability to align with his targets are inconsistent. Very limited experience operating under center. Chad Henne is his comp. That's on Tyler Shook there from Louisville. That's from Pro Football Focus's their draft guide. So there you go. That's Field Yates and also a little Pro Football Focus. And the final soundbite that I want you to hear from Field Yates on his pre-draft conference call is about offensive tackle Will Campbell from LSU. At one time was mentioned as the number one offensive tackle. Now, he goes to the combine and his arms measure a little bit shorter, and all of a sudden it becomes a problem. So here's Field Yates on offensive tackle Will Campbell, and could he possibly slide?
Yeah, I'm a Will Campbell guy. Mel Kiper and I have had some great spirited debates on Will throughout the last 6 months, and this is a unique class. Last year, I think that these two classes, last year and this year, have some real polar opposite natures to them. So last year we had this incredible run at the very top of the draft, right? You have these 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. I think we feel good about at least 4 of them, with questions to be answered on J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr. with a small sample size, but the promise is pretty good. On top of that, you had 3 wide receivers in the first 9 picks. You had Brock Bowers. You had 2 offensive tackles in the first 7 picks. And none of those guys, none of those non-quarterbacks were surprises at all. Like, Brock Bowers going 13th was the stunner, but it was too low compared to where you thought he might end up. This year, you're sitting here saying to yourself, and if you told me right now, and I've said this on our show, and I'll reiterate it until I feel differently, who are the locks, as in absolutely no chance these players slip out of the top 10, I think there are just 3. Now, and I could make the case for certainly a few others, but if you told me no matter what happens between now and April 24th, the 3 players that I think are locks to go inside the first 10 picks are, in whatever order you want to choose them, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter. Beyond that, and I think that Mason Graham and Will Campbell are definitely the kind. Jalen Walker definitely deserve to be in the first 10 picks, and Ashton Genty definitely deserves to be in the first 10 picks. You could go piece by piece with each of those and figure out why they might not wind up there. But on Will, the arm length either bothers you or it doesn't. And for me, I look at the tape first. I know Ben Johnson spoke about this at the NFL owners meetings last weekend, how arm length is a consideration when it pops on tape. It hasn't for me with Will throughout the process. We've got 3 years of him starting at LSU, and this guy has been highly productive in 3 years. Haven't seen too many quarterback hits coming off the left side of the LSU offensive line. He's tough. He has outstanding feet. The ability to match and mirror is so good. He's a force in the running game as well. And he is just a high character young man as well, that if he winds up at pick 10, I don't want to speak for any general manager here, so they might feel differently than I do, but that would be the kind of pick that I'd feel pretty confident I'd want to sprint the card in if I were the Bears.
Interesting stuff that he only has 3 locks to go, right, in the top 10. Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, right? Like, he's like, those are going to definitely go, or top 5. But he's not sure about everybody else. And that's understandable because, again, the draft just starts to really take a turn when the teams make a decision or pass on a guy that you didn't expect them to. It's like, whoa, how did that guy become available? But as far as Campbell goes, arm length is not an issue for Field. 3 years of film and great protection. Again, he was number one tackle in the draft at one time. Now he's looked at number 2 or even possibly number 3. Armand Membu obviously is getting a lot of love. Who is it? Brooks. Now I said his name wrong. Anyway, the tackle from Texas too. I got his name wrong, but he's up there as well. He was at one point number 1, and I think he's down to number 3 now. So there's just kind of up, back and forth as far as the tackles go. But according to Field Yates, he still likes offensive tackle Will Campbell from LSU. And it's funny, I bring that one up because I've talked about Armand Membu so many times, and I've had people hit me up and say, you know what? I wouldn't be mad if they took offensive tackle, but not that one. Take Will Campbell. He'd be the better one. So that's why I wanted to bring that to the table. But that's what I got from you for Field Yates and what he had to say, his little pre-draft conference call that he had last week. And like I said, I do believe Mel Kiper will have another one coming up this week. But we got your calls and texts coming up next, 707-654-4693. We'll close things out strong in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a text from Raider Sean in Phoenix. Hey, Q, just tapping in to talk about the Jack Jones situation. This makes absolutely zero sense to me. I get that he was prone to getting baited, burned at times, but he's on a 4th-round pick rookie deal. At worst, he's a cheap depth piece who has shown he can make plays at a position we're already razor thin at. Yet we'll carry a guy like Sam Webb, who's still been cut and re-signed 2 or 3 times. Just seems like this is sort of a political move, them just riding themselves of a true AP guy more than anything. Jack is also in the final year of his contract, so it has zero implications on a future year's cap situation. They have $48 million in cap, and it doesn't look like they plan to use anywhere near all of it, so it doesn't make sense that this is a cap move. Let me know what you think about the move, Q. Love the show. Keep up the good work. Raider Sean in Phoenix. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think that obviously, he's an AP guy, that's for sure. But with that being said, he didn't have a very good year. He really didn't. And I remember when they had the exit interviews and they were in the locker room, I remember us talking to Jack Jones then, and he was asked about coming back next year. Or no, he was asked about AP coming back, and he was kind of like, I don't know, and then I said, well, you want him to come back, right? And he's like, oh, well, for sure. But he just didn't seem really kind of nonchalant about the whole situation. So I don't really think that the AP thing had a lot to do with it. I just think that he wasn't good. He wasn't very good in 2024, and he needs to be. And again, you look at the body types of the guys that they bring in, the guys that Pete Carroll has coached up before, and Jack Jones isn't that body type. He's a guy that likes to take a lot of risks. I think that Pete Carroll would be okay with that if he came up with a lot of plays, but he also needs to be able to, tackle and compete. And, it just seems like he's not really like a Pete Carroll guy. I think that a lot of people had that feeling once Pete Carroll got hired, like, I don't know if Jack Jones is going to be long for the team. I thought that they would probably hold on to him for camp and then make him really battle it out for his job. But ultimately, they're making the decision to move on from him. I'm fine with it. Again, this is what Pete Carroll wants, and he wants his culture, and he has a certain tone that he wants to set, and that's what he's going to do. And I do think that there's a few guys in the locker room that I think that probably would have been. It's okay that they're moving on from. Let's just put it like that. Just from what I've heard about a couple dudes in practice, and how things went a few times, and I think that it's okay that they move on from Jack Jones. I don't think that's too serious. So they'll address the quarterback position. They'll definitely put enough bodies in that room to make it very, very competitive. So thanks so much for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Mailman in the 559. He's calling to talk about the Bengals edge rusher, Trey Hendrickson, who's disgruntled right now and would like to be traded for the 2nd season in a row. Here's Raider Mailman in the 559.
What up, Q? Hey, this is Raider Mailman out the 559. Hey, just got done listening to Trey Hendrickson. He was on a Pat McAfee show and got me thinking, I think we should trade for him. He said on there he doesn't even need to be, or he's looking for the top pay. He's just looking for, long-term, set his family down, this and that. So, I don't know, maybe we got to reverse Oreo this thing and offer maybe Tyree Wilson next year's 2, and then maybe or this year's 2, maybe next year a 2 that could turn into a 1 if we're a certain amount of wins. You know how they can manipulate that, but I think that would shake up the league and get us in a good spot. Anyway, I know we like to all be makeshift GM, but thought about it. It's what I would do. Call in whatever favor you need and march up to John Spytek's room and play him this, man. All right, Q. Thanks for everything. Take care.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, right? It's a weird situation there in Cincinnati, right? They give all this money to their wide receivers, their quarterback. Obviously, they spend all the money offensively. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He makes about $21 million a year. The top guy makes $40 million a year in Myles Garrett. Obviously, he wants respectable money after having back-to-back seasons of 17 sacks. It wouldn't be a bad trade at all. I don't think Cincinnati's going to do it. I think they're just going to let him stay there 1 more year and then move on from him, especially at his age right now. I think that they're just going to, just hold on to him, make him play. He's not going to sit out the whole season, right? He wants to get paid. So I don't think that they're going to budge. I think that they're just going to say, all right, well, go for it. Whatever. You want to go find a trade partner. But unless someone gives them some real deal draft capital, I don't think that they're going to move him. I think they're just going to make him play out his contract. Then he'll be 30-something years old, and they'll let him walk in free agency and pick up a compensatory pick. I think that that's just how they're going to play this thing out. They could surprise me. They could end up giving him a better contract extension, but it sounds like whatever they offered him, he wasn't a big fan of. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Jay in Syracuse, New York. Hey, Q, it's Jay from Syracuse, New York. I wanted to comment on something you and some callers have said on the podcast. First off, sorry for the lengthy text. It is pretty lengthy. I respectfully disagree with the take that the Raiders should keep drafting a quarterback until they find one. More specifically, I disagree with drafting a quarterback outside the first round at all if your plan is to find a starter. There are only 6 NFL teams that have a starting quarterback that wasn't drafted in the first round. There will probably be 5 if and when Rodgers signs. Only one of those teams is in the AFC, Steelers. Of course, there are outliers like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Brock Purdy, but the likelihood of drafting your guy at quarterback outside the first round is so slim. Yes, you can get lucky, but why waste a draft pick? Outside the first round, you're looking at backup quarterbacks. I don't think it's worth the small chance you hit the jackpot outside the first round when you could be drafting a starter at any other position or adding depth to a position that might see the field more consistently. You want a franchise quarterback, you better trade up to get him. I'm not sure how the Raiders feel about Cam or Sanders, but if they think those guys are their guys, then go get them. We have our Alex Smith and Geno Smith. Wait for the right draft and move up to get our Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying that's not risky, but it's a risk worth taking. What I expect out of a backup quarterback is to be able to come into the game, give the team a chance to win. I think we already have that in career 500 quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Aiden would be the ceiling for what I expect out of these project quarterbacks, and I'm from Syracuse and a huge fan of Kyle McCord. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Can the Raiders really find a franchise quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round? Is it worth the risk of missing out on a potential starter at another position? Lengthy text right there from Jay in Syracuse. Thanks for the text. I appreciate you. And the gist of it is, if you're not going to get a quarterback in the first round, don't get him, is what you're saying. And that's fine. I mean, if that's the philosophy that you want to have, I just think that the Raiders need to be in a habit of drafting a quarterback, drafting a young quarterback, having them there ready, having them there prepare, and see what you can do with them. I mean, look what Jalen Milroe just went for. Jalen Milroe just got flipped for a 5th-round pick. They drafted him in the 6th round, they being the Patriots. They drafted him in the 6th round, and he ends up going to Dallas on a 5th-round pick, right? I mean, so I don't think it's that bad of an idea if you do it, especially because, I mean, every position's a crapshoot, right? I mean, right now we're looking at Ashton Genty saying, oh, man, he's going to be that guy. What if he's not? What if he turns out to be Trent Richardson? And I'm not saying he's going to be, but what if he does, right? I mean, no position is guaranteed in the National Football League. Remember, Robert Gallery was the sure shot left tackle. He's the safest pick in the draft. He ended up moving to guard. He didn't really work out until he was a guard. I mean, there's so many different positions that you look at, and so many different players that no matter how much we hype them up and say this guy is going to be this game changer, this difference maker, it's all up in the air. None of us really know what's going to happen until they actually get out there on the field and start putting it together and get with the team they're with. Like I said, I don't have a problem taking a quarterback and taking multiple quarterbacks and going ahead and continue to rebuild that cupboard, right? And look, you only have Aiden O'Connell. He's already going into year 3. He's only on a 4-year deal. So he might want to walk at some point and think that he has an opportunity to start somewhere. So again, I don't think it's a bad habit to get in. I know what you're saying, but to me, it's. I mean, the one team that has no quarterback questions and hasn't had quarterback questions in forever is Green Bay. And what did Green Bay do? They always got in the habit of drafting quarterbacks. They're the one team that doesn't have that question. They went from Favre to Rodgers to Love. Seamless. Right? So, again, I know that doesn't work for everybody, but that's just my thoughts. So, thanks for the text, though. Really good stuff. Definitely appreciate you. And I like Kyle McCord, by the way. I think Kyle McCord is a good quarterback. He's a guy that you can get later on in the draft and, again, see what you have in him. So, maybe that's a direction that they go in and add another quarterback to the room. Maybe it's not the right guy right away, but maybe it could be. So, I mean, again, it's just it's all a crapshoot at the end of the day. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate it. We'll close out with a call from Jeff in the 503. He's calling to talk about the draft and draft simulator, and if it came down between Genty and Mason Graham, what direction he would go. Here's Jeff in the 503.
Hey, Q, this is Jeff in the 503. Just calling to check in with you, and thank you for everything you guys do out there. Let's do every day. So I put in my hour and a half on the draft simulator, and a few things that were, kind of weird was, one, they were taking Shedeur. Tennessee was taking Shedeur first, and 2, several teams were trying to move up to number 6 and give up pretty much the first 2 to 3 picks of their 2026 draft. So I wish I could be the GM and take all those picks for the next year, but I'm not going to do that when I'm just doing a draft simulator for this year. So if it comes down to Genty and Graham, I know you were talking about that the next day. 100% I'm going to take Graham. And the reason is we have a quarterback in Geno Smith. And for us to reach for Shedeur Sanders this year when we can most likely have Geno next year also is just not worth it to me. I feel like it's going to come down to those two players. I'm kind of hoping that Jacksonville does take Genty just so that we can get Mason Graham. I want to see our defensive line with Mason Graham on it. Kuntz, Crosby. I want to see that line. There's nobody's going to be able to stand in the pocket with that line. So that right there saves us. And we have so many other needs in quarterback this year. With us getting Geno, we don't need to draft a quarterback in the first. We can come back in and then get him, or even take Milroe. I'm a lifetime Alabama fan, and I love Alabama. And Milroe didn't do much for me there. He disappointed me several times. But I will say this, that with the right help and for him to sit behind Geno for a year, I think he could be something special. His legs are like no other. He's one of the fastest players on the field, and he's amazing to watch when he's doing well. And so I think with the right help, he could become a great quarterback in the league, something like a Hurts almost. Anyways, I got to go. Take care. Have a great day. Raider Nation for life. Bye.
Jeff, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And that selection of Graham would be absolutely fantastic, right? That's a fantastic pick that would make that defensive line so nasty, right? You think about Max, you think about Wilkins, you think about Graham right next to him, then Kuntz right there. You have some other guys that you could rotate in. Obviously, Butler is going to be part of the rotation, a heavy part of the rotation. You've got Tyree Wilson. You can make that strength even stronger. I would have no problem with the Mason Graham selection, right? And that's why I think at 6, the Raiders have so many different options. And depending on what happens at 3 with the Giants, say they go Shedeur, now all of a sudden Abdul Carter's there for the Patriots to go at 4 and get, or maybe they go Genty, or maybe they go offensive tackle, right? They're not going to go quarterback. So then all of a sudden you've got players there, right? It's a really good player is going to be there available at 6, whether it's a really good player that you're going to plug in and play right away, whether that's a guy that's going to be a guy that you could play later on, whatever the case may be, you're going to have a chance to get a really good player, in my opinion, at number 6. I think the Raiders are sitting in a really, really nice spot. So thanks so much for that, Jeff. I do appreciate you. So that's all we got time for on today's show. I got a couple of mock drafts that I do want to get to. Also want to get a text from Big Drew, call from Howard in Oakland, text from Refrigerator Raider. Andy Turner hit us up with a draft. Got a lot of mock drafts to get to as well. So we'll make sure we do that coming up on tomorrow's show. Maybe we'll hear from Geno Smith later on today. We'll talk about that if we do. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. But tomorrow will be the first day of off-season workouts for the Silver and Black. So we'll get back to all your calls, texts, all that good stuff on tomorrow's show as well. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.